You're listening to Bill Handel on demand from KFI AM 640.
Bill Handel Show. I'm Mo Kelly in for Bill. KFI AM 640. Elon Musk, he is a superhero to some. He is a super villain to others. But if we talk about Elon Musk, if we talk about what's happening to Teslas, if we talk about the DOJ response to Teslas, I think we should do it without emotion. And I know that's difficult to do because a lot of our politics is laced with emotion. It animates us in ways where we feel the need to defend individuals, defend elected officials, to defend political parties with all of our might and all of our emotion. That's where we are today. But I want to try something, and that is, let's see if we can keep the emotion out of it. Let's keep the allegiances out of it. And let's just look at the facts. Attorney General Pam Bondi has declared a Justice Department crackdown on what she views as politically motivated attacks against Tesla vis-a-vis Elon Musk. Quote, let this be a warning. If you join this wave of domestic terrorism against Tesla properties, the Department of Justice will put you behind bars. And we know just in the past few weeks, federal prosecutors have alleged that a Colorado woman threw some Molotov cocktails at vehicles at a Tesla dealership, scrawled the word Nazi on one of its signs. An Oregon man allegedly fired bullets and explosives into a dealership and its cars, and a South Carolina man spray painted anti-Trump messages on a Tesla charging station parking spot before throwing 5 homemade bombs at the chargers, torching them. And there are other incidents that we've seen not only around the country, but around the world. But let me just focus, hopefully unemotionally, on what's happening here in America. And there's been a lot of discussion and even dispute about whether this constitutes domestic terrorism. I'm here to tell you, and I am not a fan of Elon Musk. I make no bones about it. I'm not a fan of Elon Musk or what he's doing with Doge. But what is happening in response and the vandalism and violence happening in response, there is a very good argument, a solid argument, I would say. I'm not a lawyer, but I know enough about these issues. I can say confidently, this is pretty much domestic terrorism. You don't have to like Elon Musk. You don't have to like Pam Bondi. You don't have to like Donald Trump. But these aren't disgruntled Tesla owners setting their own cars on fire. It's not like people were setting their Keurig coffee makers on fire or destroying them. It's not like people destroying their own stuff because they're protesting, let's say, I don't know, Anheuser-Busch and trans influencers. This is something completely different. This is about what is the animating property, what is the animating motivation behind these incidents. And I'm not saying that it's George Soros funded or they're Democratic operatives like Elon Musk said. I'm just looking at the acts themselves, not who specifically may be behind them. That's a different conversation. I'm just saying these acts, as far as the definition of domestic terrorism, there is a strong argument. Why? Because, as I said, these aren't disgruntled Tesla owners who are mad about the panels flying off their Cybertruck. They're not out there doing these protests in this manner because they are mad about the quality of the Tesla cars. They are there because they are in opposition to Elon Musk. They are making a political statement and also employing illegal means and also arguably violent means. When you talk about domestic terrorism, we're talking about acts which are done from a political standpoint or political motivation and or to impact people's decisions or inspire fear along political lines. If you're trying to say, we don't want people to buy Tesla products and you are employing these methods, as far as from what I can see, if we look at this unemotionally, that satisfies the definition of domestic terrorism. It's beyond protesting. You're employing vandalism and other means to discourage people from supporting Elon Musk or buying Teslas. Now, the flip side to that is Elon Musk, and I said this on my show later with Mo Kelly, Elon Musk is going to have to make a decision. And it may not be fair, but it's a fact. Elon Musk is the figurehead, president and CEO of Tesla. He is known. The link is inextricable. You can't separate Tesla from Elon Musk. And Tesla has been built up, pun intended, over the years because of that Elon Musk association. So you can't separate the two in people's minds now that people want to protest Elon Musk. And this, what is being done, which is obviously beyond the boundaries of protesting, is going to harm Tesla. We've seen it in the stock price. We've seen it with the company's struggles more broadly. Nothing good is happening for the company. But that's different. That's separate and distinct from whether the vandalism and the violence is considered domestic terrorism. I would take Pam Bondi at her word. I believe that not only is she serious about the forthcoming charges, but I also believe, and there's adequate evidence to suggest, that there is a strong case about anyone who is charged with domestic terrorism that it will stick. It's the Bill Handel Show. I'm Mo Kelly in for Bill Handel on this Friday. Show programming note, Tim Conway Jr. will be out at the 65th Annual San Juan Capistrano Swallows Day Parade tomorrow at 11 a.m. The 65th Annual Swallows Day Parade and Mercado Street Fair will be held on March 22nd. Obviously, tomorrow, the Fiesta de las Golondrinas celebrates the return of the swallows to the San Juan Capistrano mission. The parade and Mercado Street Fair offer a full day of family fun, celebrating the Old West and the return of the swallows from their winter home in Argentina. Not only will Conway be there, but the world-famous Budweiser Clydesdales will be there too. Visit swallowsdayparade.org for details and street closures. Now let's talk about Nick Cannon. Don't want to spend too much time on him, but I want to spend the necessary amount of time. The Masked Singer is host and quote-unquote father. I put that in quotes because I have a difference of opinion with the definition of father than Nick Cannon, but he's the quote-unquote father of 12 and said, get this, he's not done with expanding his family. And during a conversation on his We Play in Spades podcast, Channing Crowder, one of the co-hosts, spoke to Nick Cannon about possibly getting a vasectomy and argued for it. Nick Cannon is not down with it. In fact, he said, I'm feeling judged. And when he was asked why he wants more children, Nick Cannon replied, why not? Well, that's a good question that I'm going to have a great answer to. This is why not. Fatherhood is not about affordability. The answer and response that I get to Nick Cannon as to why it's quote unquote okay for him to have all these kids, why is it's none of our business, they usually point to Nick Cannon as a multi-millionaire, that he has all sorts of funds available to raise kids. And I am someone who misses my father to this day, who passed away in March this month of 2022, will tell you fatherhood is about availability, not affordability. My father was always available to me. He was my basketball coach. He was my flag football coach. He was my music instructor. He was someone who taught me how to be a man as far as how to comport myself, when to stand when a woman comes into a room, on the correct side of which to walk with a woman. If you're on the street, you walk on the street side, how to manage my emotions, how to deal with adversity. That is fatherhood. It's not whether you have enough money to cut a check for mom to have on a given day, week, or month. Nick Cannon may have 12 kids, and in his mind, he's okay to have more because of his narcissism, but he cannot seriously argue he is a father and available to all of these children. does not matter how well-intentioned he may think he is. It doesn't mean that just because you show up for birthdays and an occasional school play that you're actually providing the necessary support as a father. For me, it's much more than being a sperm donor. It's much more than being the financier or the corporate underwriter for all these kids. You have to be available for them. And also you're responsible to them and for them. Can't possibly do it. He can't do it right now. And this is assuming, going back to affordability, that he will be able to maintain his level of income at least for the next 18 years or so. He has different and competing interests. And I don't care personally whether he has a form of an agreement with the mothers of these children. It's unfair to the children. I know, because I know what it's like to have an available father. I know what these children are missing out on, because they come home and more nights than not, there is not a father there to check on them, to check on their homework, to just see how they're doing, to be there for them and show them what it means to be available. Because let's not forget, they are learning, especially the male children, they're learning what fatherhood is or is supposed to be through the examples of Nick Cannon. And if he's never around, they're obviously not learning them, or at least they're learning what I believe to be is a false version of fatherhood. You have to be available. And for those who continue to support Nick Cannon, and I have to be very delicate with this issue, full disclosure, I know one of the mothers of his children. In fact, she used to work for iHeartRadio LA. So I know, put it this way, I'm a little bit more knowledgeable about the general day-to-day of how Nick Cannon spreads his time and also spreads his resources, as it were, than some people. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I care about not only the children, but one person who is involved with him. And I know definitively, no doubt in my mind, that these kids, as they get older, will find out on their own, they will realize on their own that they have been cheated out of having an actual father. It doesn't mean that they will lack for anything as far as physical needs. It doesn't mean that they won't have clothes on their back or they won't have food on the table. I'm not talking about any of that. That is important, don't get me wrong, but it's secondary or even tertiary. It is not at the top of the list of what makes a man be an actual father. I had an actual father, and here's the irony of it. My father grew up without his father, who died when he was 5. So I've never met my paternal grandfather. And my father somehow managed to become a meaningful impact on my life without having that role model. I say that to say it's not impossible, but he, into his dying day, made it clear that he was always aware of his own father's absence. It's something that bothered him. It's something that plagued him. And it's something that he swore that he did not ever want to have repeated in his subsequent children's lives. Nick Cannon is all about himself. He's only thinking about having more children because it fills his need to satisfy his ego. But I wish his ego also considered his children, who he says he's a father to when he really is not. We're getting closer and closer to the weekend. If you didn't know, I talk about this on my show later with Mo Kelly. Often, I love to cruise. I've been on maybe, 6 or 7 cruises, been to the Caribbean twice, Mediterranean cruise / European cruise, Mexican Riviera twice. Going to be cruising probably either in Africa, off the coast of Africa, or Dubai in the next 3 or 4 years. We usually plan them years out. My point is, I have enough experience with cruises that I know some things about them, some things you should do, should not do, would never do. And when I came across this story, I said, how in the hell is this even possible? There was this cruise ship, Cunard's Queen Anne cruise ship. It was like its maiden voyage, and it's 111 nights around the world. It began in January in Germany, and it saw the ship traveling between Darwin, Australia, and Manila in the Philippines last week, passing through some questionable areas. And prior to navigating these questionable areas, the captain issued an onboard safety warning. In a video of a loudspeaker announcement to passengers, it was made very clear. Passengers were told over the loudspeaker that the external promenade decks would be closed overnight and only essential open deck lights would remain on to minimize the ship's visibility. What? And passengers were also asked to turn off their stateroom lights when not needed and to keep their curtains drawn. And mind you, people have paid like tens of thousands of dollars for this 111-night trip. It's a luxury cruise ship, and it can accommodate some 3,000 guests. Well, why did they have to turn off the lights and close their curtains? Well, the waters in between Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines have been notorious for kidnapping for ransom incidents. They are worried about pirates boarding the cruise ship. And let me just tell you, if there is a possibility, not even a probability, a possibility that you're on a cruise ship and you have to turn off the lights because pirates might be out there pirating, your ass is on the wrong damn cruise ship. There is no way in the world that you should ever be on a cruise ship anywhere at any time that might have to deal with the issue of pirates. And I wonder how much this cruise line, which I've never been on, was hiding from passengers. I know I would be sick to my stomach if someone said, hey, Mr. O'Kelly in stateroom 382, could you please close your curtains because we might have some pirates out there, and Johnny Depp might be one of them, so please turn off all your lights. Amy King, I know you've been on some cruises. You might be going on some cruises. Has piracy ever been a part of the equation?
No. That would freak me out.
Yeah. And did they just drop that on the passengers? And it just seems like it did. It's like, hey, we had shuffleboard playing on the Lido deck tonight, but we're going to have to cancel that. Please turn off your lights and remain quiet.
Okay, I will tell you, though, about one kind of freaky thing that happened during our cruise. That we went to the Mediterranean, and we went to go see the pyramids in Giza, right?
Yeah.
So from the port, it's about a 3.5 hour bus ride. So we take a bunch of people from the ship, get on our bus, and off we go through the desert to Giza. And we would come to these small towns, but we never stopped. We just kept going. And we're like, well, that's so weird. And then they were like, oh, yeah, they do that for buses. And we were like, okay. And then on the way back, it was dark. So we could see the lights of the escorts that we had that were basically going ahead of us to clear the path so we didn't have to stop. And we said, well, what is going on here? And they said, well, that's because if you stop the bus, they can get on and kidnap you.
Yeah, and there are some questionable places in the world. I'm not denying that. But if you have to pay the money that you had to pay, Amy King, the money that I had to pay, and I only like to do 7-day cruises, I couldn't imagine being on a ship for a third of a year. I just couldn't.
No, that's a bit long.
But I still would research the path. Like, I'm not going to get on a cruise close to hurricane season, obviously. And there are some cruise itineraries during hurricane season in the Caribbean. Don't ask me why, but there are. I'm not doing it. This is another example. If you know anything about that portion of the world around the Philippines, and you know that that is a pirate lane, if you will, do not ever get on that cruise ship, ever. Because clearly the cruise line was hiding it from the passengers as far as the possibility of there might be an issue of getting kidnapped. That's not something I want to think about actively on vacation.
It would really spoil the vacation, I think.
It might.
Yeah.
It might. It could bring it to an untimely end along with your life. But that's just one cruise tip from me. I'm quite sure Deborah Mark may have some more during the John Cobelt show later on. But I will say this. If you are someone who hasn't gone on a cruise, highly recommend. It's a good way that you can sample a number of places without dedicating your whole vacation to one place. Like, for example, one of my Caribbean cruises, we went to Aruba. I was thoroughly underwhelmed. Did not really care for Aruba. Will never go back again in life. But I really love Curaçao, which is just off the coast of Venezuela, and I would love to go back there again. Cruising gives you the option and opportunity to see a lot of places you would not necessarily think of spending a lot of time with. You'd maybe in port for just a day, but it's a good way to sample the world. And I've been able to sample cities in Europe. I want to be able to sample more in Asia. Obviously want to get to Africa, been down to Mexico, and you get to see more of the world that way. I don't want to spend 111 days on a ship and also deal with pirates, but there are ways you can get around that, hopefully. It's the Bill Handel Show. I'm Mo Kelly in for Bill. Just want to give you this little tidbit. You know, yesterday I was talking about how marijuana, there was some unintended consequences of legalization. I was for decriminalization, not legalization for recreational use. And people usually come back at me and say, Mo, it's safer than alcohol. It's like, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. But now we have more states where it's legalized. We have more data and more history with people using it over a longer period of time. We have a better sense of the long-term implications of marijuana use. And here is just the headline. New research uncovers alarming heart risk for marijuana users. Check this out. Cannabis users under the age of 50, like Shannon Farron, could face a 6-time higher risk of heart attack compared to non-users like Gary Hoffman.
Oh, that's so sweet that you said I was under 50. That was kind. That was like as much of a compliment as I'm ever going to get from you. And I appreciate that. I noticed it and I appreciate it.
That's all I got for you, Shannon. That's all.
I have a quick question based on what you just said.
Sure.
The weed of our youth, not that I don't think you ever smoked weed. You appear to me to be a straight edge person. But the weed of our youth, I would argue, was more dangerous than a couple of cocktails. Like, I couldn't operate a vehicle after smoking weed when I was in high school. Like, there was no way in hell. I'd have a couple Coors Lights and I was probably okay. As opposed to the weed. I'm just saying, you were saying that it's
I don't
more
have a point of reference.
I think the weed today is a lot stronger.
Really?
Yeah.
But I don't know.
See, I don't have a comparison point, but I do know.
Gary didn't smoke back then, but he smokes a lot now, and he can tell you.
Right, that's what it is.
Yeah, that's it.
That's my experience.
But the study doesn't differentiate between smoking and ingesting. So it's just saying
Right.
marijuana in general, which is alarming to me.
But like now, can't you go to these designer pot shops and say, I want a gummy that's going to be 2 Coors Lights or whatever? Like, isn't that a thing?
I don't know if they can
Or I want one
regulate
that's
or
gonna make-
standardize the amount of THC in these
I
products.
don't know how it works. I need to
Well,
do more.
they're supposed to. I mean, if you buy a pack of 5 milligram, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Milligram?
Gary's
10
looking
milligram?
at Shannon because she's the resident expert in the studio.
I
at the
am
moment.
not. I never was a weed person.
I mean,
wish I
I've
was.
gone into those and said, hey, I don't want something that's going to make me feel like my hands are eating my own arms.
And what do
I
they
don't want any
say?
of that stuff.
What do they say?
They're very accommodating, but I don't know if that's part of a show or if they're actually.
I don't know. I've been in 2 weed dispensaries in my life. One was a friend owned it, and I had one edible, which was a chocolate chip cookie, and that was one of the 2 times I've ever had any type of marijuana in my life.
I went into one of these dispensaries in Denver because it opened up around the corner from my friend's house, Katie. And I went in and was so intimidated and overwhelmed by this selection that I was
Yeah.
like, I'm out. It was like going into, Nordstrom
Steve's
Rack
candy.
and being like, I got to wade through this to find the one shirt. Like, no, absolutely not. But when I did try an edible that was my father's, I ate too much. And this was the last time I did the weed. It was years ago, but I ate too much of the brownie or the cookie or whatever it
It
was.
wasn't working fast enough for you?
I think
Yeah,
I
too
just,
much?
I didn't know how much, I just took a bite out of it, which is probably 10 times too much because I just sat in a couch and became the couch and felt like I was made of cement. And I hated that.
It doesn't do much for me. And I think that's part of the reason why I never started using it with any regularity. It just doesn't do anything for me.
I just don't enjoy the feeling of bleh.
What
And maybe
feeling was that?
that's your point is that was too much.
Yeah.
I know plenty of people who do it simply because it helps them sleep,
Yeah.
or they relax, or
I get that.
it makes a show funnier or
Possibly.
something.
Yeah.
I mean, all of those things are, but you can go too far and feel. I agree, that feeling of I can't do anything, and everybody knows I'm high, and I can't go anywhere. I can't go to sleep. I can't go upstairs to go to my bed.
You're being
I'm
way
just-
too specific right now.
I have somehow become the third cushion on my couch.
That
and
one
it's-
time there was a body in my trunk and I didn't know what
Right.
happened.
Shannon Farron, what's on the show today?
I don't know. I just got here.
Okay, Gary
Oh,
Hoffman.
did you hear about the guy peeing in the water bottles at work?
Not this work, just to be clear.
There's
That
some
you
strange
know
stuff happening
of.
here. Yes.
So here was my conversation with Kiana this morning because I sent her this story about a Texas janitor getting 6 years in prison for peeing in office water bottles. And she said to me, where'd you find that story? And I said, it's this one. And I said, the fact that you think that there's more than one is a problem. And she said, well, I Googled it and she found a lot. So apparently this is a thing.
Yeah.
It's not just pee, it's other fluids, and they're going in the water bottles at work, and it's happening all over America.
So this is where you say stay dry?
No,
Oh,
We wait
sorry.
until-
But it is Friday, though, right?
it is Friday.
Coming up next is the Gary and Shannon Show. I'm out of here. Have a safe weekend. Have a fabulous weekend. Have a dry weekend, borrowing from Gary Hoffman. I'm out of here. KFI AM 640. We're live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app.
You've been listening to The Bill Handel Show. Catch my show Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., and anytime on demand on the iHeartRadio app.